Hello, welcome to the programme. Within the past hour, Russian President Vladimir Putin has addressed a gathering in the Kremlin to announce the formal annexation of 4 Ukrainian regions. He said people had made their choice. The decision to adopt the regions as part of Russia was the will of the population. The declaration, made in the cavernous St. George Hall in the Kremlin Palace, follows a process portrayed as referendums in the Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson and Zaporizhia. Well, following his speech, the Russian-appointed heads of those 4 annexed regions signed documents confirming that they were joining the Russian Federation. This despite the UN ruling the entire process a violation of international law. President Putin claimed the decision to adopt the regions as part of Russia was the will of the population. Let's have a listen to some of what he had to say, speaking through a translator.
Жители Запорожской и Херсонской области, они сделали выбор быть со своим народом, быть с Родиной, жить ее судьбой, побеждать вместе с ней. За нами правда, за нами Россия.
The truth is behind us. The Russia is behind us.
After calling on Ukraine to cease military action and return to the negotiating table, President Putin said Moscow would work to increase security in the new regions.
And today's Kiev authorities should take this free expression of will with great respect. And no other way. This is the only way to peace. We will protect our land with every possible means that we've got to provide the safe living for our people. This is a great liberation mission of our people.
Well, he also said that all the citizens in those regions now would be Russian citizens forever. Let's go to our correspondent Hugo Bashega, who joins us live from Kyiv. What has the response been there?
Well, Tim, I think the Ukrainians will be rejecting the announcements that were made by President Putin. They say that there's no legitimacy, that the so-called referendums that happened were a farce, and there is no legal implication in the announcements that were made by President Putin related to these 4 regions of Ukraine, Donetsk and Luhansk in the east, also Zaporizhia and Kherson in the south. We understand that there was a meeting of President Zelensky and the National Security and Defense Council, and the President has just released a statement saying that Ukraine is going to submit an application to join NATO. So that's the reaction that is just that's coming from the Ukrainian presidency after this announcement by President Putin that these 4 regions of Ukraine will be annexed by Russia, a decision that is not going to be recognized by the Ukrainians, a decision that is not going to be recognized by the international community. And I think the Ukrainians have been saying that this doesn't change their plans. They're going ahead with the counteroffensive to take back territory that's now under Russian occupation.
There's been condemnation right around the world from the White House, also from the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, Hugo, and now from Poland as well. And all of this comes at a time of increased peril for Russian forces quite close to Kharkiv, where we understand in the town of Lyman they are now practically encircled by Ukrainian forces.
Yeah, and Tim, we've been watching this city for a few days now, because it seems that the Ukrainians have made this city of Lyman a key target. And in the last hour, we heard from Mikhailo Podolyak, who is a key advisor to President Zelensky, saying that the city is now surrounded by Ukrainian forces. So this is a major city for the Russians, because this is a key hub used by the Russians Russians to resupply forces in the east of the country. And this is also a city in the Donetsk region in the east, one of the regions that has been annexed by Russia. And if the Ukrainians manage to retake this city, it is a major victory for them because it is a city in the Donetsk region, but also it gives them access to other parts of the Donetsk area in the east of the country. And it is another major blow for the Russians in this area. Liman was captured by the Russians in May after weeks of heavy fighting, and now it seems that the Ukrainians have managed to encircle this city with thousands of Russians inside this city. So another gain, it seems, for the Ukrainians, as they say they're going ahead with this offensive to reclaim territory that's now in Russian occupation.
None of these four regions are under full Russian control, and today there was a rocket attack, a missile attack in Zaporizhia, which led to quite a significant loss of life. What more details do you have about that?
Yeah, the official said 25 people were killed, more than 50 injured as a result of a missile attack by Russia. It seems that a gathering point was hit in Zaporizhia. There was a convoy with dozens of cars apparently waiting to get access to Russian-controlled territory. And I've been to Zaporizhia a number of times, and there are a number of those gathering points there for people leaving areas under Russian occupation, but also people trying to get access to those areas to take medicine, humanitarian aid and other supplies to those towns and villages in Russian-controlled territory. And everybody knows the locations of those places, so it's hard to believe that this wasn't an intentional attack targeting those civilians there, trying to bring humanitarian aid to Russian-controlled areas in the south of the country. So again, the authorities saying that 25 people have been killed. And what the Ukrainians have been saying is that this is how Russia is responding to recent military defeats on the battlefield, by attacking civilian infrastructure and also attacking civilian targets. And they say that's what happened today. President Zelensky calling it a cynical attack by Russia, saying that Russia was a terrorist country, again reacting to this attack in Zaporizhia today.
Ugo Bashega in Kyiv, thank you very much indeed. Well, all this comes at a time of mobilization of forces in Russia. Also, President Putin in the last few minutes has said that he would ease restrictions or citizenship restrictions for foreigners who wish to join the Russian army. Let's get more on this with Sarah Rainsford, our Eastern European correspondent, former Moscow correspondent as well. That is interesting as well, isn't it, in terms of the time of mobilization and Russia under pressure at a time of this annexation?
Yes, definitely. This is a kind of a two-pronged thing. You know, Russia is annexing these territories, grabbing a massive chunk of Ukrainian land, or at least saying that that's what it's done. And it's also mobilizing at the same time. So I think, you know, this is clearly in response to what's happening on the ground in Ukraine, the military situation on the ground. These referendums had been planned. You know, this was always Russia's plan, but it was going to be at a different point. It wasn't supposed to happen when this land, this territory was still partially and in two regions very substantially occupied by Ukrainian forces. So this is happening in a rush. It's a mess. And Vladimir Putin has to sell that mess to his people, and also, of course, now to the soldiers who are going to go and have to fight for that mess. You know, they need to understand what they're fighting and potentially dying for. So this was his chance to set out his case. And I have to say, it wasn't entirely compelling. I mean, it was a long, long list of complaints, particularly about the West. This is Vladimir Putin signaling to the West, you know, that he sees them as absolutely fundamentally hostile, and that he is ultimately at war with the West. But in terms of how people in Russia itself see that, then, you know, are they fighting the West in Ukraine? Are they fighting to protect Russian speakers? What exactly are they doing there, and how committed really are they to that?
Tens of thousands of Russians of fighting age have left in the past few weeks. But how divided is Russia itself over this war, still described actually as a special military operation?
It's difficult to know because, of course, polling is difficult in a essentially authoritarian regime. People don't necessarily answer honestly. But I would say, there is obviously support for what Vladimir Putin has called this special military operation. There's obviously a lot of opposition to it as well. We've seen protests. It's very, very difficult, in fact, totally illegal to protest in Russia, but people still try to do what they can. But we've also got this big mass of people in the middle who may be passively supporting the war, but primarily they just try to stay out of it. And now it's that mass in the middle who are being drawn into what's going on in Ukraine. Those people who basically did a deal with Putin, a silent deal, an unwritten deal that we'll stay out of politics, we'll keep out of it, we're not interested so long as our lives are stable, so long as we can basically earn a living and go about our business. He's broken that contract now because he's drawn them into this war. And that is actually a very interesting point in terms of the sort of social contract between Putin and his people.
This annexation process has to be ratified, does it, by the Russian parliament? Well, presumably that'll happen relatively quickly. And then what are we going to see?
Well, I think actually it was supposed to have been ratified before. I think this was supposed to be the last moment in the process, but it's a rush, it's a mess, it's not quite happening to plan. We were expecting this to be an address to the two houses of parliament. Instead, it's what it is now. So it's all a bit confused, but ultimately this will be a formalised process, and then Russia will say these are our borders. It will send its soldiers. It is sending soldiers to those borders. But actually on the ground, what changes? I mean, it can't just walk into those areas. A lot of that area is controlled by Ukrainian forces. So it doesn't, on the ground itself, it doesn't really change that much. It's just what Vladimir Putin's prepared to do in order to back up what he's now drawn on the map. Is he going to use more force and more devastating means to defend what he's now calling Russia's borders? He's threatening that. He wants the West to believe he will. It is a risk, but that's kind of where we are now.
Sarah, thank you very much.